What's up, homegirls? Welcome to Benevolence, where kindness matters and all are welcome to the table. We are your hosts, Ceci
and Nisha. Benevolence is a ministry where we uplift and encourage through topics of conversation that are important in our Christian walk.
We are going to get real. We will focus on topics that we're curious about and what many are afraid to talk about.
We saved the seat just for you. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it.
You are listening to episode 6. Beauty and Imperfections.
Well, Liz, we want to thank you so much for joining us on an episode of Benevolence Podcast. Welcome.
Welcome, Liz. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course. We're so excited because, you're joining us and you get to talk to us about your testimony and what God has done in your life. For those of you that are listening, Liz is, she is also a podcaster. She has an amazing podcast called Beauty Marks Podcast. She's been doing it for about a year and a half or so. She's been doing it for a while.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow, it's been almost 2 years.
It's
almost
awesome.
2 years.
But she is killing it. She is
amazing podcast.
She is bringing so many people in. She's talking about so many different topics, and we want to commend you because you're doing an amazing, amazing job. And this is just the beginning, for your podcast and for your ministry and for what God has in store for you. So welcome once again.
Thank you. Very excited to be here and with you guys. I love the space that you have created for these kind of conversations. And I feel like we have a really similar heart to talk about the real conversations that are not spoken about and also give space to women to feel heard and seen and know that they're not alone.
Yes.
Awesome.
That's awesome, Liz. So this episode is pretty much about you. It's about your testimony and what God has done in your life. And we do have some questions at the end that we'll give to you and we'll ask you. And then, throughout the conversation, we'll obviously ask some things here and there, but honestly, we just want to just tap into your life and tap into your testimony and to know what has God done for you. So whenever you're ready.
It always feels weird getting interviewed when you're always interviewing people. So I'm like, all right, where do I start? But no, thank you for giving me the space. And I was raised in a Christian home. So my parents, from when I remember, they were always taking us to church, had the Sunday, routine and with my sister. So I'm the middle child. And it was always something that we cherished and something that I saw with my parents praying together. And I'm really thankful for them for instructing me in that way. And we moved a lot growing up. So it was kind of like a very unsteady childhood though. And throughout my years, I struggled with some things internally, even though I was going to church and I was doing all the quote unquote Christian things. I was very involved and still had these feelings on the inside that were going on. I struggled a lot with my self-esteem issues and just my mental health, but I didn't know how to name it at that point. And I had gone through sexual abuse very young. And that was something that I actually didn't deal with until I was much older in my 20s. So it was a lot of things that I was kind of working through internally that was kind of coming out throughout my years. That led to me having disordered eating, and it led to me being super insecure about my body, seeking attention from boys, and especially struggling a lot with my identity of who I was and my value, and in a cycle of toxic relationships for many years that led to a lot of mental health issues, a lot of unhealed trauma from my childhood that continued to hit that wound over and over of that I'm not enough, that I'm not loved, that I need someone else to give me that affirmation. And so God has really worked through my story in that way to call me for who I am and say you are mine and you are loved and you are seen, not because of anybody else. And He's definitely helped me to see also mental health as something that God gave us emotions and He understands it and He made us. So it's he, I feel like there's two, I always focus a lot on mental health because I know my journey has been of understanding that we can have both. And that's kind of where my story, you know, has been. And so now I get to talk about that more on the podcast.
And so in regards to like your upbringing, were you always here in Florida, or were you in another city, or?
So I was actually born in Miami, lived in Honduras for a few years, then moved to Oklahoma, and that's where I was raised.
Oh, wow.
Most of my life. And then I came down here to Orlando in like 10th grade. And then I've been here ever since. So it was a lot of like instability, like very like, you know, moving around like family and work. And so I had to adjust to like making new friends, and like, you know, it's kind of hard, like those years in high school where it's like you're meeting people and like, who are you? Like, what do you want to do? Like discovering yourself. Like, so I went through a lot of those stages.
Now, when you were like, let's say a kid, I would say like maybe adolescence, maybe in your preteens, you know, what were some challenges that, because obviously my testimony and yours they kind of run parallel to each other. Yeah. And I know that a lot of the trauma that I had endured early in the beginning, it kind of affected me as a kid, and it affected my identity very early. Because I was exposed to things that a normal child shouldn't be exposed to. So I remember just having to deal with a lot of like identity, even my own sexuality at times, you know, just kind of just not knowing if, you know, I liked girls or I liked boys. And a lot of the peer pressure from even middle school was there, and always looking for attention, always looking for love and seeking that. So how was that like growing up, like in the early, you know, preteen age, especially in Oklahoma? Because girl, I'm sorry, but I don't know where the heck Oklahoma is.
It's in the middle.
I don't know what it's like living over there. So, and I remember your sister, she was on, Stephanie, she was on one of our episodes in past seasons, and she had shared, you know, her story and how it was very difficult for her. And she went through a totally different journey, but like, how was that? Like, how was growing up with your parents and with your family, with your sisters in a different state instance? Maybe, you know, just from the childhood trauma, what were some of the difficulties and challenges that you faced as an early preteen kid?
Well, because we moved so much, like, I feel like we became so close, especially me and my sisters, we became super close because the dynamic there was so different. Like, people didn't look like me. You were either white American or Mexican. And so if you didn't fit in one of those, then it's kind of like you. So I remember saying that I was Mexican. I was like, I'm Mexican, because nobody knew where Honduras was. Yes. I was like, I am Mexican. Like, I even had like a chola stage, like complete, like the big.
I think I did too, though. Yeah, you did. I'm Puerto Rican, so I did.
It's like I was trying to fit in so hard, and then I went to like the Abercrombie with Hollister face. Like I was like trying. It was like a lot of like, I just wanted to fit in so bad. I think now I see that, you know, with my disordered eating, it was like that was a way, like eating unhealthy eating habits. That was the way that I was coping with how I was feeling because of my sexual abuse and just not knowing like what was going on. And like, I would have dreams at night and I would just feel like a lot of fear, and I would get like anxiety as a child, but I didn't know the name of that. And so I feel like that led to me having this just kind of like feeling lost within myself and like kind of going to certain extremes of, you know, not eating. Like I was a little overweight. Now I know I was emotionally eating. So I was emotionally eating when I was very young. And then I got into this habit of where I wanted to lose weight. And because I got bullied in middle school and I was kind of like a late bloomer. And so I, like, it was always about like, you know, guys making comments about my butt and like how big and like, so I felt super insecure about my body. And then I got into this cycle of like, well, like I'm going to lose weight. And so I stopped eating. And a lot of the girls around me, like I was kind of one of the heavier, curvier girls, and all my friends were like really skinny. And so I stopped eating, and I would literally, I remember like being like one bite, like I would like pretend to eat like something. And I was like, okay, like one bite, like, oh yeah, like, and just like throw things. Like I would always turn my plates into like, you know, so nobody would know, turn my plate into the trash, like, and just that became such a cycle. And so I lost a significant amount of weight really fast. And when I went, and, you know, everyone's like, whoa, like love it. And, you know, that admiration and that affirmation feels great because you're like, wow, like people see me now. Like I feel seen. And we equal that to love. At least I did. And so like people see me, people love me, people like me because I didn't like myself. And so that whole process kind of got me, you know, to attract certain people that like, you know, that are very superficial and like those things. And, you know, kind of, I started dating, like, I think it was like 7th to 8th grade, but I started dating like a 17-year-old at like 13.
Wow.
And so I was like, what is this? But at the time, you know, I felt cool. Like I felt popular. Like, look at me. But I was definitely exposed to things that I shouldn't have and, you know, put in places that I shouldn't have. And I feel like all of this was all like my desire to be like loved and, you know, and I remember the first time that I got cheated on by my boyfriend, and it broke my heart and it broke my little heart because I just felt like my whole illusion of like, oh, so someone else is better than me. Like there's always I'm still not good enough. So I've lost weight. I'm in this clique trying to be like them and look like them, but I'm still not enough. And so it kept hitting at that wound of like, I'm not loved. I'm not cared for. There's always going to be someone better than me. And all those insecurities started continuing up until high school, because literally in every relationship that I have been in, I have either been emotionally or physically cheated on. So it always hit that place, and people would tell me like, but you're beautiful, you know, but you're this, but I never saw it. Like, honestly, until very recently, I would say I healed that area of seeing myself the way that other people see me, because I was always reaffirmed that I was not. And the boyfriends that I would have wouldn't compliment me. The people, it was like, always like, like, yeah, but there's someone else. They're like, oh yeah, but this. Or, so that cycle continued. And even being in church, you know, like I did the whole purity culture, the rings, and I felt more shame than anything about my sexuality. And I felt like, just because of what happened to me with my sexual abuse, I also felt like I was already tainted from a very young age. And that all just continued to carry on throughout. Like, that was like the message of myself, you know, like the shame of feeling like I wasn't enough, and continued up until I was an adult and I got into a relationship with someone from church. And that also was a toxic relationship that was not healthy for me. And I feel like the message definitely today of someone is like, definitely look at the fruits of people. And, you know, it's not just a position in church, you know, anything can happen with anybody. And, you know, like I was able to find my healing, like through therapy and through learning, but it took me a very long time.
Yeah. And now we know you're a big advocate for therapy. And we love that about you, because we know that a lot of people don't believe in therapy. So thank you for being an advocate. But my question to you is what was your breaking point that you were like, I need to talk to someone, I need to go to therapy? What was that breaking point for you that you were like, I'm going to go to therapy?
Yeah, I would say Jesus and mental health. I'm going to make a shirt that's like Jesus and therapy.
That's a good idea.
Because I feel so strongly about it, because I have dealt with like suicidal thoughts throughout like my life. And that is something that, you know, because of my self-worth being defined by someone else, and like when they didn't want me, I felt like, what's the point of me even being here? And I remember 2 very low points that in 2017 and again in 2019, that I was really struggling with a relationship that I was in, a toxic relationship that I was in, of just, you know, it was just not good for me at all, but I was fighting so hard to be in it. But I had like panic attacks, you know, we had very unhealthy fights, and just kind of felt like I had this codependency with this person, that like this person was my life. And I feel like all these things aside from the relationship were happening in my life. Like it was just, I didn't feel like a center, I would say, or like a calmness. It was just like my life felt like chaos. And I felt like especially in 2019, because I was in a long-term relationship on and off for many years. And because of that relationship, like that definitely damaged my mental health. But I already had certain things that I was dealing with. And when it got to the point of this relationship ending, I feel like it felt like my whole world was ending. And, I was alone. I was very isolated at the time. I had moved out away from my family. So it was kind of like just me, didn't really have the best relationship with my friends and that community. And like, so it was kind of like me completely apart from everything. And so I was at a very vulnerable spot. And I remember just crying like almost every night, like during that season of my life, and just feeling like a numbness, just feeling like I was kind of like disassociated with my life. Like I was functioning, but like, it was kind of like I was not there, it's like an automatic mode for such a long time like that. I feel like I forgot like the hope of like what good days felt like. And I think as time went on and I continued, it got really bad that my body also started giving me very big signs that something was wrong. And I started, I got a rash all over my body. My eye, like vessels of stress would pop. My skin was like flaring up. My body, at 2 occasions I was passing out. Like I passed out in Disney Springs at the movies one time, and that was so scary. And couldn't drive home after a work event one day. Like it was just, my body was just so shutting down. Yes. But I don't know if you guys have read Trauma, The Body Keeps the Score. So it's about how trauma, and we hold a lot of our emotional baggage or emotions or things that we stress and trauma, we hold it in our body. And that's why it makes us sick. Like it literally can make you sick when you are going through emotional pain. It can equal physical illness. And so that's what was happening. And I feel like that is what made me get help, because I realized that it was much more than what I thought. I had been in therapy for my relationship for a little bit before this, but I was just thinking like, oh, it's just like, fix him, like fix him. Like I wasn't really trying for me. And so over time, I started kind of like changing the narrative of like, oh, it's me. It's because I have a lot of unhealed trauma, and I have codependency issues, and I have an anxious attachment, and I deal with high functioning anxiety, and I feel dissociated with my everyday life. Like I feel very numb, so it was just a lot of that struck me to start getting help. And at the end of 2019, I was clinically depressed, and I went to the doctor, and they wanted to put me on medication. And that was so like a big moment, because I never thought, like me, what? Like I'm very outgoing, very kind. Like I just am always out there in my life. Like I'm, I've never considered myself someone that had struggled, but I was struggling internally for a very long time, and nobody really knew. So that was my moment that I'm like, okay, I need to do something about this.
Wow. And I guess my next question would be, because what would you say to someone who's seeing all the signs, but now I don't want to put God in a box and say that, God can heal, and he will heal. And that's why we believe in him. That's why he died on the cross, and that's why he sacrificed himself. But like, someone who comes from a very religious background and just doesn't believe in the medicines or in the therapy, that solely believes only in the healing power, which the healing power is something that's unexplainable. It's proven.
And miracles can happen.
Miracles can happen, and we believe that. But like I'll be honest to say, like Nisha can testify as well, like therapy and mental health was like, that was something that just was not spoken about at church ever. And we come from like very conservative backgrounds and just ways of thinking that now as like adults and women and now mental health society and all of that, we see that there is a need for that. So what would you say to a listener or, someone who you know, doesn't see therapy or doesn't see antidepressants as, you know, medication as a source or a help. You know what I mean? Like, did you have that conflict yourself, or was that something that was easy for you to do? And then what would you say to someone who has that mentality of just not relying on therapy and all of that, but which is possible, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I mean, it was very taboo, like in even my own family, like it was very, like, I think I was like the first one to go to therapy in my family. Like, so that was something that took a lot of strength, because I think that I heard of therapy. Like, honestly, I'm like, where did I hear from therapy? I think I would hear it and be like, oh, that sounds good. Like, it's only for like serious issues. Like, it's only like for like people that are really, really sick. And I think I was, because of the sexual abuse that I never really dealt with, I think that was like the first thing. I'm like, okay, I have some trauma, you know, like I have something like kind of serious. So I think I like categorized it at first of like this thing, but then realizing that like, wait, like we all had big and small trauma, like and people have all experienced something. And I definitely believe in the power of the Holy Spirit, and that he can heal and he can comfort us, and he's there with us and he can help us. But I feel like humans are just Jesus, like God made us so like holistic, like he, like so many parts of us, like body, mind, spirit. And I feel like he gave us these emotions, and there were many people in the Bible that struggled like, with their mental health. You just don't see it. Like, it didn't equal like mental health. It was just like, we see it like they had like every emotion possible. And even Jesus struggled and with his emotions, and just like, God, like maybe take this away. Like before he went on the cross, like he knew what he had to do, but it was like that like fight of like, man, I just this feeling, like it was like, and he was in so much pain for what he was going to have to do. Like, and you know, he wept and all these things that he experienced, and it's in the Bible, but I feel like we don't put it towards like us. We're not like, like, so we relate, like we're in this, you know? And so I think that for someone struggling with that idea, you just have to remember that the spiritual part is only one part of us. And I feel like that is a great part, but you can be spiritually mature, but emotionally, and you can be a little bit immature or not healed. Like when things happen, and, you know, people say like when bad things happen to us, you know, that resentment that we feel, that bitterness that we feel, that hurt that we feel, that wound, you can ask God to heal your wound, but you have to take some practical steps towards that healing.
So good.
It's not just one thing like, oh Lord, like I forgive them, like release this, like some affirmations. No, sometimes that means like working through like the root of where that comes from. Like, man, have I been rejected before? Like, why does this hurt so much? Like, man, I feel like this pain, like a literal pain in my chest. Like every time we talk about this topic, like, what is it about this? Maybe you're being triggered. Maybe there's some trauma there. Maybe there's some unhealed wounds there. And I feel like we cover it with, you know, just like put a Band-Aid on it. Like, you know, Jesus can heal all wounds, and he can, but we're also have to be an active participant in our healing and in our life. Like I know many people that I love that I know that they're not healed. They go to church every Sunday. They do the things that they need to quote unquote do. And they believe in the power of God and his miracles and everything, but they are very bitter, and they're still holding on to their trauma that happened to them at 20, at 30. And they bring it up all the time. And they, you know, have all these like internal wounds. And I feel like just because they're not physical, it doesn't mean that we're not hurting and someone's not hurting. So I see therapy as like our internal work. And our internal, it can help our internal healing. And I feel like my therapist has been a Christian therapist that knows the word. And there's moments that she brings in scripture and she reminds me of who God has called me to be. And she lets the Holy Spirit kind of guide the conversation. So it's not that it's a secular thing. Like, there's people that have the knowledge and the power to educate us to maybe set you free from something like an addiction, like addictions, people call them, bondages, and people call it in the spirit, like in the Christian world, like it's like a bondage and all this, but maybe there's some trauma that you had that started creating that you started leaning on alcohol to soothe what you were feeling. And because of that, it became such an addiction. Like, and again, I'm not a mental health counselor, but it's like, do you understand? Like it's such a deep part that I feel like it takes a lot of vulnerability. And I would say a lot of just looking at yourself and saying, man, I know I have to work on something, and I know I have to heal from this. And I don't want to feel this way anymore, because God wants us to live a life, not just of prosperity and feel good, but he wants us to feel free and to feel that we can truly be ourselves and love him with our whole heart, not things holding us back. So that's all I got to say. Get in therapy.
No, I love it.
For everyone.
Yeah. I was telling Ceci like a week ago, I actually dealt with like, I have a problem with being honest when I'm not okay. I would rather just drown myself in like all my sorrows. I would rather just not tell anybody what I'm going through and just cry every night and like, it's just horrible. So, one thing I do relate with you is, I dealt with like not feeling good enough, or not, I would compare myself with everybody, and man, I need to look like that. Or I wish I could speak like her, or I wish I can do this and that. And then not realizing that like, there's only one me, and God created me, Nisha, and that's okay. And that's amazing. But I guess my question to you is you obviously had to admit that you're not okay in order for you to like seek help. I'm not saying that I need help. I mean, God is my source and God is my help. But how have you been able to be honest? Like, I don't know, I have a hard time just admitting that I'm not okay. And like, it's so funny. Like the other day, like Pam called me out and she's like, something's wrong with you, whatever. And that was the only way that I was able to like tell them like, yeah, girl, I'm not okay. And I'm like crying or whatever. But I guess like, how is it like, how are you able, or maybe can you encourage someone that might be dealing with something that they haven't been open about, or they haven't been honest about? Like, how do you get to that point to just be like, it's okay to not be okay and to admit that you're not okay? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you for being honest. I know that that's hard because you're saying it publicly here.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. I feel like, everybody knows me as like, I'm always smiling. I'm actually the one that's counseling people, and I'm like dying inside. I'm like counseling them, and like my friend group, I'm like, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And then in the meantime, I'm like dying inside. Like,
and it's hard.
As long as everybody else is okay, I'm fine. Like I could be dying and I'm like, okay, like that makes me happy to see someone else okay, even though I'm like not at a good place.
No, I mean, I think it took me a long time to be open like that, because I also didn't like trust people, think people really cared. At that point, some people wouldn't follow up. So I would be open and I would be hurt or let down, because I'm like, oh, I said something like really hard, but I guess like it doesn't matter. So I feel like it took some time for me to be like, to give trusted people and safe people that space. And like how you said, like Pam, for you, like if she checked up, she's probably a safe person for you to do that with. Will you do that with everybody? No. But I feel like having those core people where you like kind of start saying like, actually, honestly, I'm having a rough day. Like I need to be encouraged today, or honestly, this happened today. Like, can you pray for me? Or those little things. I feel like it takes some time, and it's like a muscle you have to practice, because I think most people are super guarded with their things, as some people should. Like some people shouldn't know everything. And I don't think everybody is a safe space, but I feel like it took some time to realize that like vulnerability is not weakness. It actually brings connection with people. And when you get to share what you struggle with, it makes you more human. And it also helps people connect. It like helps you connect more to others around you, because people connect more with people that are vulnerable than people that are just like, everything's great, everything's good. It's like, wow, like I wish I was like her. Like, what is she taking? And we want to be the strong ones. And think that like how you just said, like, we have God, and of course, but like he wants us in community. He wants us to rely on each other, to like lean on each other when we're suffering, when we're going through, like cry with each other, laugh with each other. Like, it's not only like, I tell my friends, I'm like, it's not only through the good days, like it's through the bad days. Like, I want you to lean on me, so like, same as like, your friends want you to lean on them just as much. It creates that connection and that
That's
like
so good.
Stronger connection with them. I feel when you're like vulnerable and other people are like, man, I feel the same way. Like, we're here, I've been through some rough stuff with my friends, and I'm like, dang, I'm having a bad day. She's like, I'm having a bad day too. I'm like, we're here too, having a bad day. It's like, it's okay. Like it makes you connect. And I feel like that helps the relationship, but I definitely feel like it's having compassion with yourself, and
that's so good.
Learning the tools that you need. Sometimes we don't know how to manage our emotions. We don't know what to do when we feel a certain way. Like how you said, like maybe some of us withdraw, or maybe some of us react, or maybe some of us want to talk to people. Other people, they like don't want to talk to anybody. So it's like figuring healthy ways to cope with how you're working through things, and understanding that like you're going to have good days and bad days, and that's okay. You don't have to put on a face for anybody. And especially for God, first of all for God, like you don't have to put on a face for him. You can be authentically yourself and be like, man, this is how I feel. Like God, like I don't know, like, I don't know what's going on. This season has been very difficult, and just being honest with him, because he wants the most authentic version of you. And then those safe people want the most authentic version of you, not just the filtered, perfect person, and they'll love you for that.
Thank you.
It's so good.
Thank you for sharing. So good.
No, thank you.
Like, I'm part of the friend group, obviously, and we tell her all the time to be honest with us. But it takes time. But it's good to hear from someone else, because
you're like, girl, I've been telling you that. Like, I love you regardless.
You know what I mean? And it's just, that was great, Liz. So thank you. So I'm going to just start with the questions to kind of like conclude the conversation, but I don't want to conclude. It's been amazing.
I know it's been amazing.
So much, Liz. It's so good. But what have you learned throughout your life and your experiences?
Oof. I mean, in my years that I have, I sometimes when I'm telling my story, I'm like, it's like if I lived forever, but it's like, I feel like that we are more resilient than we think we are. Like when we're going through something hard, we don't ever know how it's going to turn out. And we're like, I can't imagine better days than like, but it's how we can keep going. And that through God and through like healing, honestly, like internal healing is so powerful, because then you're able to truly live the life that God wants you to live, and bringing the opportunities. And I would have never thought that 2-3 years ago, I would be talking about my story and about my things, like even about the relationship. Like, man, I wanted that to be my story, and I was fighting so hard for that to be my story. And now I get to actually help women that have been through breakups and are single in their late 20s. And it's just crazy how that all has worked out. Like I would have never guessed, but I really believe that like God turns all our stories, for his glory and to glorify him.
Wow. That's so good. Another question we want to ask you is, what word of encouragement would you give to someone who is going through or has experienced a situation similar to yours? And what steps can they take? It's a long one, I know.
Yeah. No, well, first, keep going. I would say there are heavy days. There are days that you really want to give up. I know when I felt depressed and numbness and just felt like my life was kind of falling apart at that point, I felt just in like, I would say despair. Like it was just such a dark place that I feel like until I was able to truly surrender and how that looked like was literally me being like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't want to feel this way. Like, I want to feel better. Like, I am sick and tired of feeling sad all the time and feeling just all these other emotions that like I feel like life is so much more, there's so much more to life than this. Like I would hope. And so I feel like until I was able to surrender that to God and be honest with the people around me that I was struggling, is what helped me to get better and admit that I wanted that change. And it took a lot of time. It took a lot of me having grace with myself of the things that I allowed, things that I kind of put myself in, to be honest, some unhealthy patterns that I had and some toxic cycles that I had created over time. And it took some like looking and reflecting on myself and being like, man, like I want to create new patterns, because we can always learn no matter what. We can always learn new ways, and we can always get better. Like I really believe that like we have the capacity to do that with like community, with God, with educating ourselves. And I know that when you're healthy, like internally, like on the inside, like it radiates on the outside, and you're better, like you're a better person, like you're a better, you're able to serve with freedom. You're able to look outside of yourself and be like, how's my neighbor doing? Because I'm not so focused on my own things. I'm able to then step out and serve and look out and help other people. And I feel like that's what our story really does, is really God transforms our lives to then be able to help other people and guide them through. Because, you know, our direct pain is really the heart of our purpose. Like what we struggle with is usually what God uses to help other people.
So good.
And shine that light.
That's so good, Liz. So good. And like, I know we had two more questions, but you already answered them.
Yes.
You answered them. I didn't want you to repeat it, but Liz, we appreciate you so much. Honestly, I'll be honest, I am very encouraged today.
So encouraged, girl.
I'm so
you
encouraged.
You counseled me, okay?
You counseled me too, even though like, you know, I'm not going through what Nisha's going through right now, but or what she went through, but I'm in a dry season. I don't know. I just feel just dry. I feel like, and I know the last conversation we had, I was talking to you about therapy, and like that hasn't like started yet. And like, I don't know. There's something that I need to fix. You know what I mean? Like I feel it. It's very, I'm very numb right now. It's very dry. I don't feel anything, but I know that there's something that's hurting and that I'm trying to like process, but I don't know how, and I don't know where to find it. Like it's there. It's like, it's like a benign like tumor or something.
Yeah.
It's just there. That's what I personally feel like in my spirit. And like, I don't know how to even begin. I don't, you know what I mean? Like I need to find it. First, I know it's there. And then now I need to try to feel like, where is it? What is the area? What is the trauma? What is the experience that has caused that benign little tumor feeling? And I just need to heal it somehow, obviously with God's power, but definitely like, the therapy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that too. And, you know, I know, I don't know exactly what you have all gone through, but I know that like that awareness is like already a big step of you realizing like, okay, there's something here. And sometimes, at least for me, that was where I was like, okay, like, let me then take this to someone that maybe can give me, like, walk me through some things to find that out, because sometimes we can't, like, sometimes we don't know where to start. And, and of course that's also can be in your time with the Holy Spirit to be like, God, show me. And he does show us. He's like, ooh, like something will happen. You're like, ooh, right there. Like, right there. That's what it is. Like, so, you know, I'll be praying for you. And I know that journey of like, mental health, we all struggle like in some way. And I feel like we're more
something.
Everybody, like the more that I talk to people, I'm like, wow, like, I mean, it's not only now, but like, it's just been a lot going on in addition to what we all personally go through. So it's like, you know, relying on each other and, you know, on God to help us through. And sometimes that looks different in different seasons. And I think I think also being around people that like believe in that it's like Jesus, and maybe there's some other options to get, because there's some things that they can't fully understand. And sometimes you don't have to fully understand people's story. You can just be there for them.
So thank you. Yeah,
so good.
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Liz.
Well, Liz, we want to thank you for joining us at the table of Benevolence Podcast. If you are listening, make sure you go to Beauty Marks Podcast and you go and subscribe wherever you get your podcast and go bless her podcast. She is all about mental health, women empowerment, testimonies, all different types of topics. She has amazing guests and she tells her different parts of her testimony throughout her season.
Yes.
So we bless you. We bless you, Liz. We bless
thank you so
Beauty
much,
Marks Podcast. And we just thank you once again for joining us and being real and helping us through our
And thank you for counseling us.
Oh, you guys are amazing. And I love the space that you've created. I'm so proud of you guys, and continue that God will continue to do his thing with Benevolence Podcast. I'm glad you guys are back. Very excited. And we need to do something together soon.
Yes, absolutely.
So as we finalize this episode of Benevolence, we just want to remind you that you will always have a seat at the table. You are loved, you are chosen, and you have a purpose.
Yes, so thank you all for tuning into Benevolence, where kindness matters and all are welcome to the table.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Benevolence Podcast for more fun posts and videos.
Benevolence Podcast is available on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And stay tuned for next Monday's episode of Benevolence. You don't want to miss it.
Bye!